Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Juniper. I'm the managing producer for Feldenkrais Access, and I'm really excited to be here. This is a Q&A to introduce a series of weekend workshops called the Essential Action Toolkit, presented by David Zemach-Bersin. And David is here today to answer questions about the first of these weekend workshops, Easy Breathing. It will be this coming Saturday, April 1st. And David, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I would say that these Saturday workshops that we did nearly every month last year and are scheduled for nearly every month of this year of 2023 are very important to me because the nuggets that I try to provide to the people who attend are the Feldenkrais lessons that I myself would use if I had felt myself having some limitation, restriction, pain, discomfort. So here with our 3 hours dedicated to breathing, it's not so much a program about correct breathing, but rather lessons that I would use myself if I felt my breathing to be restricted or tight, or if I felt that I needed to change the state of my nervous system. I think that our breathing is one of the most effective ways of altering, changing, improving the state of our nervous system. In other words, breathing happens most of the time unconsciously. Almost all the time it's happening unconsciously, but it is something that each of us can very easily bring under voluntary control and thus use breathing to affect our mood, our digestion, our emotional state, etc. So in a nutshell, that's what I hope to offer you this coming Saturday with the workshop, which of course the workshop is available for streaming. So even if you can't attend, you can sign on and you'll get the recording.
That's right. It will be available on demand and available always. Here's our first question, David. Someone wrote in who has long COVID and chronic fatigue. They're wondering if this course would help them with that.
Oh my gosh, yes. Now, I mean, I can't make you a promise, but I can tell you, of course, I'm quite intimate with the issues of long COVID, and it appears that most people who have long COVID are also having respiratory issues, respiratory distress sometimes, and are in what we would call a sympathetic state. In other words, long COVID has the ability to create stress for emotional stress, but also a stressful state for our immune system. And so the breathing lessons that we will do in this workshop are oriented toward establishing a more restful, harmonious state of our nervous system. And thus, there's tremendous amounts of research showing us how our immune systems work better when we're in a parasympathetic state, meaning that it potentiates our immune system. And so thus, if we can have a way of voluntarily tilting ourselves toward a parasympathetic state, which I hope to provide you in this workshop, it should help your your immune cells to work better.
For people who aren't familiar with the term parasympathetic state, can you explain a little bit about what that is and how it relates to the Feldenkrais lessons we'll be doing?
Sure. So our involuntary nervous system, meaning not the parts that are going to our muscles, that's our voluntary nervous system. Our involuntary nervous system, I'll just make it very simple, is divided into two basic functions. And one is sympathetic, the sympathetic ganglia, which we otherwise know from high school or college as our fight or flight mechanism. And the other aspect, and they are always in a kind of give and take balance with each other. It's not only one or only the other. It's not a just complete off and on. And the other aspect is called parasympathetic, which again, you probably heard as the rest and digest state. But it's so much more than rest and digest or fight or flight. And so this is, I don't want to go on for too long, but we as human beings have the ability to habituate to a sympathetic state. So it's not, for us, it's not only fight or flight, do or die, as it might be for other organisms, other animals, but for us, we can habituate to it as if the danger or the trauma is here in this present moment. And we have the tendency to stay in that vigilant state, and this has a profound effect on our breathing, on our immune system, on our cognitive state, and our perception, our thinking. So this is extremely important to understand, and to gain the control of being able to move ourselves through our breathing or through things like meditation or sometimes exercise. This is extremely important as adults to be able to have some voluntary control over what are often involuntary responses.
Thank you. We got another question from someone who is asking about a health issue that they have. They have a hole in their diaphragm as a result of a gastric acid issue. And they are wondering, would this make a big impact on their breathing? This person also notes that they notice a hesitation to fold their body, which feels like a very significant movement restriction.
A hesitancy to flex their body, to fold. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know how near or far away you are from surgery, if you had surgery. So you have to be mindful of that. But nothing we do will be aggressive. If we do anything that involves movements that you feel in any way discomfort, then you just simply, you make those movements smaller, slower, or you don't even do them, and you say, oh, well, I'll do that movement tomorrow or the next day. I'll see how it will be. Because I have an extraordinary belief in your ability to heal and your ability to improve. That's the beautiful thing about the Feldenkrais method and awareness through movement, which is that we access the inherent neuroplasticity of our brain, which is capable of improving our state. And so, of course, your breathing has been affected by any restriction in your diaphragm. surgery in that area, and even the stress of having an ulcer. So my guess is that this will be very helpful for you.
On a related note, David, someone just wrote into, I think it was the YouTube page, asking if this workshop would be helpful for hypertension.
Well, of course. Now, there's many different reasons that one has hypertension, and I am not a licensed or even unlicensed physician, and so I cannot give you any kind of a medically based answer, but hypertension, which usually involves a raised blood pressure, I can tell you that very likely these lessons will reduce your blood pressure, and that ought to reduce not only your hypertension, but the way in which hypertension can bring us closer to being in feeling anxiety. So, which is what happens when we have anxiety or even alarm, apprehension, right? Our heart quickens, our blood pressure is increased in order to move oxygen more quickly to the musculature. And so the difference between that and a hypertensive state is very small. A hypertensive state is chronic, and that state of apprehension may abate. But from a physiological point of view, they have great similarities. So I think that the lessons will be very effective at helping you to reduce this pressure and this blood pressure.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. I just want to answer a question that was just submitted about whether or not these lessons are going to be available online. Just to reiterate, in case you missed the opening remarks, this is part of an 8-series program. All of these workshops, they're 3-hour workshops. They will all be available online. Alina is posting links to the programs in the YouTube and Facebook pages, so you can follow those links for more information. And we got another, yeah.
If I could, Juniper, I'd like to go back to one point about the last question, which is that there's something very extraordinary about our nervous system, which is that, of course, the state of our nervous system is affecting our breathing. It reflects our emotional state. It reflects our physiological state. Our breathing changes with changes in our thinking. You can have certain thoughts that raise your blood pressure. Now, that means it's a very rich, complicated dynamic, but it works both ways. That's the beautiful thing. It works both ways, and we can change our physiological state through our breathing. We can change our emotional state by changing our breathing. So they are so intimately interconnected, or maybe just two sides of the same coin. And so that makes our emotional and physiological state very, very malleable and receptive to change.
Well said. I'm glad you added that.
Thank you.
We have a question about All right. Breathing in the pelvic floor.
Mm.
Is there a relationship between restricted breathing and poor pelvic floor awareness?
Oh my gosh. Well, pelvic floor awareness. Well, awareness is an interesting word because usually it's when things are not working so well, or when we have discomfort or pain, that we become aware of a specific place, location in ourselves. That somehow it comes out, its foreground, it emerges in our consciousness. Usually these parts of ourselves, or our diaphragm, the movement of diaphragm, are just in the background, not needing our attention, but just they are what we might call, they are self-regulated, auto-regulated. And that's that's how it can be, and I'm hesitant to say should be, because obviously I do believe in the ability to have voluntary control over seemingly involuntary processes. Now, if there is tension in the pelvic floor, and I'm not sure that's what you're referring to, but if there is tension and holding in the pelvic floor, then it's absolutely going to have a significant effect on your breathing. Why? Because the restrictions in the abdomen are going to inhibit the movement of the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is the, I'm sorry about that junk call, just a minute. Our diaphragm is the largest muscle by square centimeter of our body. And normally our diaphragm is working, again, it's a voluntary muscle, but it's working involuntarily. And it's shaped like a mound, like a vault, and it descends as we inhale. And that's why people kind of incorrectly call breathing diaphragmatically, they call it belly breathing. And that's creates unnecessary confusion, I think. Because in fact, what you do feel, of course, is that your abdomen expands as you inhale. But there is no breathing in our abdomen. It is that our diaphragm is descending. And that, now, it's important to say that movement of the diaphragm is extremely important for our pelvic floor, for our digestion, for the health of our digestive system, for the health of our liver and kidneys. Why? Pancreas, because spleen, I'm sorry, I don't want to leave anybody out. But as the diaphragm descends, it squeezes, it creates circulation, it squeezes our organs and squeezes our intestinal system. And it's just an extraordinary system from my point of view. And so if I'm holding in my pelvic floor because for whatever reason, because I feel like I need to, then those muscles tightening, and of course it's the adjacent abdominal muscles that are also tightening, then we find that that descending of the diaphragm is reduced by 50-60%. Is extraordinary. You can again, there are very elegant studies showing how the movement of the diaphragm is in direct relationship to the ability to relax the abdominal muscles, not relax into that they're doing nothing, because obviously our abdominal muscles are working all the time. If I'm walking, if I'm standing, right now sitting, they're helping me to sit nicely. But if there's unnecessary tightness, then that beautiful movement of the diaphragm, which is also connected, it's important to say, is also connected to our involuntary nervous system that I was speaking about a few minutes ago. So that beautiful movement of the diaphragm gets restricted when there's tightness in the abdomen or holding.
Thank you, David. We have a question from someone who's watching online who asks if you can please say something about how to use the breath to heal early trauma. And well, it says to heal early trauma, developmental. I'm not sure if I'm missing a word, but I imagine they mean to heal early childhood trauma.
Well, I don't want to, I guess, get engaged in linguistic distinctions. And being somebody who I identify with, I'm a fellow traveler with early childhood trauma sufferers. And I don't want to say anything too radical, but I think you can never really, you can't completely heal. You cannot completely heal these early traumas. What we can do is change the influence they have on me in this present moment, on you in this present moment. This is something, because the events, the traumas, they happened. There's no taking it away that it happened. There's no cauterizing it. There's no erasing it. But I can have a tremendous influence over how much of my life is affected by these early traumas. And I'm sure you're not inventing this early trauma that you're referring to. But the only thing we can influence is this present moment. And so, to answer your question more specifically, traumas are linked to, of course, a change in our breathing towards a sympathetic state. It's not simply a trauma that we define now as adults, being 30, 40, 50 years old, and we can say, oh, that was a trauma. No, I believe that you, as an infant, as a child, it was a trauma then. It's not just a trauma in with your ability to think reflectively. Even if you don't know the all of the parameters, the specifics of the event. And I believe that as a child, you knew because there isn't you're not knowing in the way that we know now as adults, but you experienced physiologically, neurologically, you experienced it as a trauma then. And so that altered your breathing. That influenced the way that you carried that forward It influenced the way that you organized yourself, the way that you encountered, or I could say the way that I encountered the world. And as I said earlier, Feldenkrais lessons access the neuroplastic capacities of our nervous system to reduce the influence of our habits, whether they are early habits or they're adaptations to injury, whether they are emotional habits or thinking habits or habits of holding myself and habits of restricting my breathing, maybe. That we can improve, that we can change. Just think of it this way. Movement, think of it this way. Movement is the way that our nervous system learns. You think about that. Movement is the way that our nervous system learns. And breathing is movement. Breathing is movement. And so if we can change and improve my self-organization, my neuromuscular organization, well, as Dr. Feldenkrais would say it, you leave those old feelings without their anchor. We leave that early trauma without its anchor. And I can be more present in this moment rather than carrying the past into this moment.
That's a very beautiful and optimistic way of talking about it, David. And Karina, who wrote that question, wrote in again to say that it is the best, most beautiful answer, sincere, and exactly what she needed to hear. So, Karina, thanks you. And I thank you for this Q&A. I think we'll leave it there. Such a beautiful and potent inspiration about how the Feldenkrais method can help us all.
Thank you. Thank you to you. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions and to Alina. And I hope to see you on Saturday.